I went to the movie with two believers. Afterwards, we spent the Sabbath together, praying, decreeing, declaring. We reflected on things in the past. We've admitted things we're struggling with. We prayed. So it was a powerful day. Of course, the Sabbath's off over here because the sun set around like 2 or 3 hours ago. The other two believers went home already. I'm waiting on the underground or the metro to go home. And the conclusion we all came to tonight is that as a believer, it's recommendable and necessary to be in contact and to meet other believers in person. Why? Because as human beings, we are vulnerable creatures. We are spirit beings, but we're still vulnerable creatures. And the type of people you have around you affect you. If your mind is renewed, your mind cannot be polluted, but your mind can be burdened by the negative influence of people that operate in the negative. So, if during the week you're dealing with those without Christ, and then during the Sabbath or on some other day you meet other believers, the fact that you have believers who are renewed in their minds come together, that has a cleansing effect on you. So whatever there was that clinged onto you or that jumped on you from other people is then decimated by the presence of all those believers together. So that's how believers have assemblies together. It doesn't have to be in a church building every Sunday, but as long as believers come together. And there's one thing I want to tell you here to my subscribers. We discussed the sexual health of the Netherlands also tonight in depth, because remember we're three believers from Israelite background also, or better Judean background. And because I'm an anthropologist and future sociologist, so I look at things from both the group perspective as well from the philosophical, historical perspective. Let me tell you that in every generation there is some dysfunction or defect that needs to be processed. This is how it will be till Christ returns. When you have people, and this is something I say to you directly, believer, when you have people above age 22 or 23, so they're approaching their mid-20s, when you have people that are approaching that age and still they don't want to admit that they have things to process, it may not be personal things directly, but things of the community, because as a human being you are a community creature, so you absorb things from the community you grow up in, and because the world is in darkness, there are things you need to process to be delivered from. Someone that approaches their mid-20s and they still don't want to admit that they have things that they need to process, such an individual is becoming delusional. Look, if you're not aware that you experienced some traumatic things during your youth, or if you're not aware that your community is traumatized and therefore you need to process things, okay, if you're not aware, you're not aware. But even if you're not aware of it, if the thing is haunting you, you will notice some oddities here and there. At least admit the oddities. When you have someone approaching their mid-20s and they don't even want to admit any oddities, that's someone I wouldn't recommend you to hang out with, nor to be involved with, because they are in denial, and the denial will turn into a pathology. And eventually such people will turn into pathological liars. Why? Because they will lie. They will lie to themselves and to others to be relieved. They need a job to pay the mortgage, or they have a boyfriend, girlfriend, or they have a spouse, so they have relationships and things that they want to preserve. So to preserve those things, they will lie. They will cheat and scam you to keep you around them to be at ease. But eventually, this will escalate so far that it will become obvious that they are defective and dysfunctional. But when it comes so far that this becomes so obvious often, they're so far gone that they don't even want to admit that they need help. They don't even want to admit something's going on. Look, if someone went through a rough time while growing up, and at age 30 they're still processing things, okay, that's reasonable. But if someone is 40 If someone is 40, then it can be that they have to process some things yet. If the processing began later in their 20s or in their early 30s, okay, then you can understand that at 40 they're still processing something. But if someone is approaching 40 and they still don't even want to admit any oddities, nor that they have something to process, seriously, such an individual is dangerous. Now you have those in their early 20s who are already dangerous, who are already becoming reprobates. Okay, so you have early reprobates and you have later reprobates. So what I'm telling you now is not a rule to hold on to, it's just a guideline for you. So it's when someone is a teenager, they were just, a few years back they were just a child, so they're now developing into an adult, so it may be too much for them to face certain things. Okay, that's obvious. Okay, we're human beings, we are vulnerable creatures. But in your early 20s, you should notice, you know what I'm saying, you should acknowledge things so that you can begin the processing of stuff. What if you have someone who doesn't want to face anything? If by their mid-20s they still want to face anything, they're already turning pathological. If they are in the mid-30s approaching 40s and still want to admit anything, they've made a choice to contribute to darkness, and they've made a choice to be a stakeholder of the dysfunction and defects that haunt the community. So they are an enabler of evil. Now you have early enablers of evil who already in their late teens are enabling evil because they've made up their mind already that they don't want to face anything. You have early enablers, but when someone is not an enabler, yeah, they're not facing things, eventually they will become enablers because you can't go through life, years passing by, and you don't notice that you need to process something. That is not possible. Everyone, whether it's early or a bit later, you will notice that the world is not functioning as it should. You'll notice that the world's in darkness, and you'll notice that communities are haunted and hurt, and people need to process things. You need deliverance, and eventually realize that you need Christ to be delivered. So when someone over a long period of time doesn't want to face anything, consider that individual dangerous. Because either you face things and you realize you need solutions and you figure out that Christ is the solution, or you harden yourself because you keep fleeing from stuff, and eventually you'll hit a wall and you remain in denial, and that denial now enables evil. It's one of the two. There is no third way. Rarely will you find someone past the age of 40 that's still not aware. Most people hit the wall in their early 20s. Some of them even in their teens. Some of them even early in their teens. Anyway, anyone that remains in denial for way too long becomes pathological. So pay attention. Well, that's it for now. Keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.